Joining the conversation, member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, and editor of the New Yorker magazine, David Remnick, joins us. Good to have you both on board this hour.
So what do you think, Congressman? Let's not just look at the Putin event. Let's look at the entire week. How do you think the entire week unfolded?
I think it was good. You know, first trip. There's probably no real headlines in terms of anything accomplished with the summit with Putin, but I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's way better than standing in front and saying, you know, I trust the Russians more than our own intelligence. And, you know, and one of the other good things is just, you know, being able to walk away and say we have expectations and now we can judge on that basis.
Exactly.
I'm still a little concerned about Nord Stream 2 and why we didn't, you know, why we've waived sanctions on that. But from a trip perspective, I think it was fine.
Yeah, that's one area of conversation we have yet to have.
And that will continue. He lifted the sanctions temporarily. That debate's going to continue. I'm wondering about the difference between, we've been talking about the special relationship. Instead of having a president attacking Theresa May, it looks like Biden actually got along very well with somebody who he'd been critical of before, with Boris Johnson. Same thing with the G7, same thing with NATO. I mean, it's doing it's
like old school politics.
It's doing the little things. It's doing the small things. Yeah. It's making sure you've got your team together. How did he do on that front?
I think good. I mean, look, it's even if I don't agree with all his policies, it's refreshing to see somebody stand up, say nice things about NATO, about our allies, about the importance of NATO. You know, not bluster with Russia, but also not be super nice to Russia and say, you know, Vladimir Putin and I are friends, but NATO and I aren't, which is what you got with the last administration. So I think all in all, it was a decent trip for him.
Yeah.
I think we'll see.
Well, President Biden is back at the White House this morning, having wrapped up his first overseas trip as commander-in-chief. The 8-day tour across Europe culminated with that face-to-face meeting with Vladimir Putin. President Biden called the talks positive. Putin said they were constructive. Where divisions remain, election interference, human rights, and cyber warfare. Russia denied recent attacks on the U.S. and instead accused the U.S. of being the largest cyber aggressor. Here's President Biden explaining what comes next.
This is about how we move from here. I listened to, again, a significant portion of what President Putin's press conference was. And as he pointed out, this is about practical, straightforward, no-nonsense decisions that we have to make or not make. We'll find out within the next 6 months to a year whether or not we actually have a strategic dialogue that matters. For example, when I talked about the pipeline that cyber hit for $5 million, that ransomware hit in the United States, I looked at him and I said, well, how would you feel if ransomware took on the pipelines from your oil fields? He said it would matter. I made it clear that we will not tolerate attempts to violate our democratic sovereignty or destabilize our democratic elections, and we would respond. The bottom line is, I told President Putin that we need to have some basic rules of the road that we can all abide by. I also said there are areas where there's a mutual interest for us to cooperate. For our people, Russian and American people, but also for the benefit of the world and the security of the world. There wasn't any strident action taken. Where we disagreed, I disagreed, stated where it was. Where he disagreed, he stated. But it was not done in a hyperbolic atmosphere. And now we've established a clear basis on how we intend to deal with Russia and the U.S.-Russian relationship. There's much more work ahead. I'm not suggesting that any of this is done. We've gotten a lot of business done on this trip.
David Remnick, I remember watching you at the CFR in New York interview Sergei Lavrov. My God, it must have been 8-9 years ago, and I was struck by how much resentment fueled every utterance that came from Lavrov. It obviously has shaped Russian foreign policy for 21 years. A little bit of that edge was off yesterday, though. I'm so curious, with your vast expertise in Russian history, what your takeaway was from yesterday's meeting.
Well, I think that Joe Biden set out to do certain things, and he did them in a very immediate way, which was to reestablish a relationship with allies in Europe that had been demeaned and debased by 4 years of Trump. And then he went in front of the Russian leader, and he acted as an American president should, delivering clear messages of national interests and so on. And he behaved as he should. In any real world, that would probably not be a headline, as the congressman said. But unfortunately, in the fallen world in which we've lived in the last 5 years under Trump, when we've had just debased relationships with our European allies and the most curious relationship with Vladimir Putin, things needed to be reset, to use that now fallen term. That's number one. Number two, our biggest interest in the short term with Russia, of course, is nuclear peace. They have an outsized nuclear arsenal and present a threat that is enormous, and that needs to be kept under control. And it's better to talk with the Russians than not. Always, I think, not talking with them, like some Republican congressmen suggest, is nuts. It's just wrong. But we also have a long-term interest with Russia and with everybody else is to set some kind of democratic example in our own nation. And we have debased that, unfortunately, in recent years, and we need to reestablish that. And I think that Joe Biden, the more he can do to represent the reestablishment of democratic liberal values in this country through policy, through rhetoric, through action, that is important to the future of Russia, not in the immediate sense, because, excuse me, Vladimir Putin is not going anywhere. And he's crushed all opposition. But in the long term, that's very important. We've seen that historically.
Yeah, the czar is not going anywhere, Casey. Casey Young's here and has a question for you, David.
Well, so to pick up on what David was saying, Congressman, about the issues we have here at home, I mean, I was watching the Putin press conference yesterday, and he didn't say Ashley Babbitt's name, but he invoked the woman who was killed in the January 6th riot and essentially parroted some of the talking points that we're seeing on our far right conservative media even from some of your colleagues like Congressman Paul Gosar. I mean, what is going on with that?
Insanity. It's not even Paul. It's our own. It's not the far right. It's just the right now. You know, where it's saying that she was assassinated. Now the new push is that the FBI actually somehow planned and assisted in January 6th.
You have members that are actually promoting that.
Yeah.
Conspiracy theory now.
Insane.
And
it's the circle of life. I mean, the Russians, well, not just the Russians, but there are Chinese propaganda websites that are spitting this out. Falun Gong are spitting out conspiracy theories every day. I'm having to talk to family members. And they're saying, oh, we don't trust the press. Oh, but you trust a Chinese cult? That's where you're getting your news from? And the answer is, yeah.
Well, it's a shotgun of information.
From.
It's been so much information peppered on these people that now you can just say FBI planned January 6th. That's the new thing. You can't prove otherwise, because by the time you do prove otherwise, they don't even listen to facts anyway. And this is the legacy of Trump and Trumpism. This is the legacy of blatant, outright lies to people that are being abused for their raw, noble patriotism.
And by the way, Eugene, the thing that I found is